actually a double name, Annie Laurie, just to make life difficult. Annie Laurie Gaylor, and I'm co-founder of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I'm here with...
And I'm Dan Barker. I'm co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and Annie Laurie and I are married. In fact, we had our 32nd anniversary Thursday night here in Iceland at a very, very nice fish restaurant, and we were here. This is our second time in Iceland. We were here 13 years ago when Hopi and Sidmet organized a wonderful conference with the actress Julia Sweeney and Richard Dawkins, and it was just a wonderful time to come. And now it's great to come back and meet some of you same wonderful people again.
And this workshop is called "It Pays to Complain," and that we know that you can make a real difference by complaining about religion and government, or in social policy, or discrimination against non-believers. And but we know that everybody's got different laws in different countries coming from completely different perspectives. So we're going to just share what's worked for us. But before we begin, I wanted to ask, besides, if you're from the US or UK, don't raise your hands, but if you're from another country, can you raise your hands? And can you tell me what countries you're from? Belgium? Colombia?
Finland.
Finland?
Denmark.
Denmark?
Brazil, but living in Romania.
Brazil, living in Romania.
UK.
Okay.
Norway.
Norway?
Philippines?
Philippines? Norway?
Norway.
Norway?
Australia.
Australia? And Malaysia? Wow. You're brave. So obviously, what works in the United States can't work for all of you, but at least they are kind of case studies.
So this workshop is for the smaller or medium-sized groups that want to grow, that want to continue a campaign of growth. We used to be a tiny group years and years ago and have grown to quite a larger number. We have chapters around the country, and our chapters have a mix of priorities. Some of them are primarily social. People just come together because they want to socialize. Some of them are primarily educational. They want to have lectures and talk about science. Some of them, however, are primarily activists. They want to go out and make a difference in the world. That's their goal, their primary goal. So it's great to get together and talk and have lectures and that, but there's that old saying that after all is said and done, usually more is said than done. So I think people join our group because they see that we are doing something. A lot of our members tell us, you're making a difference. You are changing the law. You are enforcing the law. So we would encourage some of you to take activism as a priority for your group.
So, how does this work?
There you go.
Oh, okay. Doesn't look stretched. So when I was a college student, 42 years ago, my mother, Anne Gaylor, and I founded the Freedom from Religion Foundation as a regional group. And it came about because she was a feminist activist who had gone around our state of Wisconsin in the US to try to legalize abortion, actually was successful, of course, and decriminalize contraception. And I was, I was in 12, 13, following her around, and both of us realized that the organized opposition to women's rights and contraceptive and abortion rights in the United States was organized religion. And she realized, to quote her, that the battle for women's rights would never end because the root cause of the denial of those rights was religion and its control over government. Unless religion is kept in its place, all personal rights will be in jeopardy. And certainly her caveat has never been more timely today because unfortunately in the United States you may be aware that we're under grave threat with reproductive rights again. And 42 years later, this battle of church and state rages on in our country.
And then there's Annie Laurie dressed up in a Handmaid's Tale. This was a month or two ago in Poland with the Kazimierz Wojcinski group that was just accepted today for Humanist International, and participating in a march there in central Poland. And in our country, a lot of protesters are using this outfit as sort of a symbol of protest.
Oops. And we went national in 1978 as an organization in North America. And we started with 2 of us, and we have over 31,000 members in America, in the United States. Dan joined in 1985.
I joined in 84.
84,
Yeah.
after leaving the ministry.
And I was a preacher for a lot of years. You probably know. You've probably read my book, Godless, that tells how I changed my mind from preacher to atheist. And now we are the largest organization of free thinkers, that's atheists and agnostics, in the United States, working with 2 purposes. One is to keep state and church separate, which is our main focus, and the other is to educate the public about the views of non-theism, which is where humanism falls into that part of the...
And 4 years ago, we had a building campaign. We have about 25 staff. We went from all volunteer to over 25 staff, including 9 attorneys. And we had part of that building, the smaller part, and we added on the addition. So that's what you're looking at.
That's my office on the 3rd floor, and above it says, "The man upstairs."
And that's the growth, I guess we talked about.
Some of the growth from the past few years.
And so I'm sure you all know that we have an addition to our Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, and there is now a block of 5 white Roman Catholic men who can dominate the court.
And that was a real game changer in our country for constitutional law. It changes everything. It changes how we pick our cases. And we're awaiting word from this newly changed Supreme Court on a case that they're deciding, which was taken by the American Humanist Association, challenging a 35-foot cross in Bladensburg, Virginia. Nevertheless, since Donald Trump was inaugurated, the Freedom from Religion Foundation has had a dozen positive victories in the courts, and either a decision or a favorable settlement in the courts. So we have a strong 12 victories and I think 3 losses in those 2 years.
Sorry, how's this work? There we go. So one of our main messages is to remind the United States of our secular roots. And those of you who are from the United States know this. Unfortunately, many Americans do not know it, that we have a godless constitution. We were first among nations to adopt a constitution that did not claim a pipeline to a divinity, but put sovereignty in we the people. And so this is a sample of an ad that we have run periodically on July 4th, which is our Independence Day in the United States. And it's to counter over 350, we can't counter them all, but they put over 350 full-page ads every year saying this is a Christian nation, we're based on God.
Hobby Lobby.
And it's a group called Hobby Lobby, which sells hobby stuff, but is run by a bunch of fanatics and who have managed to also hurt women's contraceptive rights in the United States.
So we use this ad to correct that bad history, and there's 6 of our founders. There's a close-up of it. There's Thomas Paine. If you remember Thomas Paine, who wrote The Age of Reason. There's Benjamin Franklin. He criticized any government support for religion. George Washington, who stayed at arm's length away from religion, which he said religion produces more acrimony and discord than any other cause. John Adams, who was the president after Washington.
We get a clap for him?
Massachusetts contended.
Oh, I see.
Oh, there you go. John Adams. He signed the treaty with Tripoli, of course, that said the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Thomas Jefferson, who became the 3rd president. He urged, of course, you know that letter that he urged his nephew to question with boldness even the existence of God. And then...
and he said the Establishment Clause, that's the First Amendment. The Bill of Rights had 10 amendments, and the first one had the Establishment Clause saying Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And he was asked by the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, in a famous exchange to explain what that meant. And he said it creates a wall of separation between church and state. So obviously that's a phrase we use a
You
lot.
want to explain Madison? There's Madison.
Oh, he's up there. And then this is James Madison, who was the primary architect of the godless Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and our fourth president. And he did condemn the legal establishment of religion. He said torrents of blood had been spilt in the old world when religion and government were united, and he thought that not even threepence, 3 pence of public money, tax money, should go toward religion. And Jefferson's Wall of Separation and Madison's secular constitution is the basis for almost all of the Freedom from Religion Foundation's litigation, and we have taken well over 70 lawsuits. We have won at least half of them, and in many other cases, when they were thrown out of court for one reason or another, we have prevailed anyway. But we do try to end violations through education and persuasion, rather than having to sue. That's a last resort. And we now have 9 attorneys and 2 legal assistants, and they write complaint letters. We get about 3,000 complaints a year from members of the public about state church entanglements. And they average 1,000 letters, formal letters a year, and we end over 350 violations of separation between religion and government without having to go to court.
So we do want to change the law, but more than that, we want to enforce the law. I mean, there are many lawbreakers in our country, all over the states. And so if these letters we send out don't work, then we will go to court. We will take a case. Here's the case. We have to wait until we have good plaintiffs, a strong case. Here's one where we sued over formal prayers conducted by a school board in Chino Valley, California. And the school board resembled not so much a school board as it was a noisy church service. They were praying and they were talking about Jesus, and students were coming to this secular school board and they were getting preached at by this religious right group who were elected to the board. So 20 different people with children in the schools complained to us. It pays to complain. And so we took the lawsuit and we won the lawsuit at the court level. The school board dug in their heels and they appealed, and we won at the appeals level in the 9th Circuit in California. And then they decided not to petition the U.S. Supreme Court, and so that is a solid victory which affects at least 10 different states within the United States.
Yeah, these are cases that just we're telling you about that happened this year. And
then here's Morristown.
So this spring we got a final victory. This is a church in Morristown, New Jersey, and they needed some money to repair their sacristy and their places of worship. And they went to the state of New Jersey and got it. And other churches got millions and millions of dollars to repair churches. These are not historic churches, these are in-use churches. And the New Jersey Constitution specifically says you may not use tax dollars in support of or repair of churches. And our letters did nothing when we pointed this out, and so we had to go to court. And we lost at the county level. We went to state court, and then the state appealed directly to the state Supreme Court, which they were allowed to do. We held our breath, and then we won 7-0 unanimous ruling in our favor. Yes, thank you. We applauded too, and then the county said we're going to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which had, in the meantime, lost Justice Kennedy and gotten Judge Kavanaugh, so we were very concerned. We got one of the foremost legal scholars, Erwin Chemerinsky, to represent us, and fortunately, the Supreme Court refused the appeal. It's called cert, and this is a solid victory, and we have saved taxpayers millions and millions of prospective dollars that were going to go simply to promote religion.
And then we also complain about symbolic cases. Here is a huge, how tall is that, 25, 30 feet?
35 foot, I think, again.
In Florida, the city of Pensacola, Florida, that Christian cross, which is used for Christian worship services, is on a city park property. So we think this belongs on church property, but not in a city park for all residents. So we complained about that, and we sued over that, and we have won, and then we have won on appeal. And now the city wants to go to the Supreme Court, but that's sort of on hold because we're waiting for another case, another cross case.
Yeah, it's very concerning, however. And then we won a lawsuit against a Texas governor, Governor Greg Abbott, who had told us, don't mess with Texas. So we like to mess with them. And they had allowed a nativity scene to be put in the U.S., or in the state capitol for the first time in Austin, Texas. So we decided to put up our own nativity. And this is the Founding Fathers' nativity. The Bill of Rights was adopted, very fortunately, on December 15th, 1791, very close to Christmas, or what many of us call the winter solstice. And so this is honoring a reality. And so we've got some Founding Fathers in the Pledge of Allegiance looking adoringly at the Bill of Rights, the birth of the Bill of Rights. And we have this in various state houses around the country where there are nativity scenes.
And the Statue of Liberty.
And so the governor said, you can't have this up. We're going to keep up the Christian nativity. So we did win at the federal level. The governor has appealed. It's a free speech case, and we expect to prevail even in the Fifth Circuit, which is located in Texas, one of our most conservative. But we're waiting on that.
So you took my line, now you can do the next one.
Okay. So, and then we've also sued, and we had great fun suing President Trump, who you heard about the Johnson Amendment earlier. I think it was Liam mentioned it, or Bob, which prevents 501c3 tax-exempt organizations like churches and like the Freedom from Religion Foundation from using tax-deductible donations for political purposes. And Trump got up and said, don't worry, churches, you can now endorse from the pulpit, I've repealed the Johnson Amendment. Well, he doesn't have the right to do that. I mean, it has to be done by an act of Congress. And so we forced his Attorney General to admit in court twice that Trump does not have the authority to do that and that the Johnson Amendment has not been repealed. But he keeps saying it. It's the big lie tactic.
And this was a full-page ad that we ran in the New York Times and other places about that issue. We lose cases once in a while. Here's a case that's very painful to me. My representative asked the chaplain of the U.S. House of Representatives to allow me to open Congress with a secular invocation instead of a religious prayer. And that's been done all over the country at other levels, but there's never been an atheist open Congress with a secular invocation. And the chaplain turned me down and said, no, you have to pray to a higher power.
And who was that chaplain, Dan?
Chaplain Conroy.
He's a priest,
Roman Catholic priest. And he said, well, you have to be ordained. Well, I was ordained. And then he said, atheists can't pray and solemnize government because you have to acknowledge a higher power. I sent him a draft of my remarks saying, well, look, in the United States of America, there is no higher power than we, the people. We, the people, are the highest power of reason. But he said, no, that wasn't good enough to solemnize Congress. So we sued and lost. The appeals court in D.C. said that Congress has the right to make whatever rules it wants, and if the Congress wants to make a rule that says the prayer has to be religious, then the courts cannot interfere. They have to defer to that. So rather than pursuing legal action, the next course of action would be then to get Congress to change its rules. We now have a full-time lobbyist, and one of the items on our lobbying agenda, especially now with this new Freethought caucus that exists in the U.S. House of Representatives, is to get that rule changed. They just changed the rule about an oath to God, to so help me God. So there can be a legislative solution sometimes when the legal solution fails.
To explain, the U.S. House had formally said when people were witnesses they had to take an oath to God. Of course, that's not in the Constitution. The Constitution even gives the presidential oath, and there's no God, there's no Bible. And so now they've recently changed that witnesses they just give them a secular oath. So this is a big change in our Congress. So we are hoping to be able to prevail on the secular invocation. Now I want to switch from the legal to the other things that FFRF does, which is to promote free thought, to educate the public about non-theism. And this is, I guess, it's part of an ad that we ran after the big revelations in the state of Pennsylvania that probably made international news about the 600 priests who'd been molesting and raping children. And at that time, we also wrote the U.S. Attorney General and asked him to commence federal investigations and he is, and many states are now doing that. And we also ran this billboard in Chicago, where one of our members who had been molested by a priest gave us the money from his settlement to take advertising. So this is one of the ads that we ran, and plan to keep running because it's very effective, I think. And go on, Dan. See what else?
Well, your name is on the next part.
Okay.
Let's see.
So this is something that we started in 2015 actually, and we're revving it up again. I'm an atheist and I vote. I'm secular and I vote, and it's aimed at millennials and younger people. The older people in our nation vote, the younger people do not, and many of the younger people are non-religious. So we're working also with Secular America Votes on voter registration.
We also have a national radio show which has been running, we're in our 14th year now, and we just started a national TV show. It's called Freethought Matters, and there's the comedian Julia Sweeney, and there's two other people there, and it's broadcast in at least 11 cities around the country, representing more than 20% of the viewership. On Sunday mornings, we like to call it the Sunday morning unsermon. So, you can turn on the TV or the radio any day, almost any time of the day, and you can hear something religious. How often do you get to see or hear something that's the secular, atheist, humanist point of view?
Well, in the U.S. we're talking about. And the non-religious, how does this work then? So the non-religious voices are still too often muzzled in the United States and distorted. And this is a survey, came out in 2006, it was updated, about the other groups, out-groups, in which they compared all of the so-called out-groups, blacks, women, Arabs, Muslim, gays, and atheists. And they found, it was a longitudinal study that found from the 1960s until 2006, all of these so-called out-groups had made huge inroads in social acceptance with the exception of one group, and I bet you can guess which group. It's the atheists. And then several years ago, they looked at it again. And the researchers were very surprised because there's been such a growth in the non-religious, the nones, N-O-N-E-S, in the United States. And usually when you have a big growth, or a quarter of the population, you see more social acceptance. But we've stayed down at the bottom of the totem pole. Only now Muslims have also gone down in social acceptance, so we're tied at the bottom. And they have ridiculous stereotypes that atheists are prostitutes and thieves, and we fill the jails, and in fact the opposite is true. We're disproportionately unrepresented in jails, and we're the people you would most not like somebody in your family to marry. And when I asked the researcher, how can there be these ridiculous stereotypes, she said that many people in the United States have never knowingly met an atheist. And so that's why we came up with our Out of the Closet campaign, taking a page from the LGBTQ community. And
What's the next slide?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
So this is just an example. We have a digital campaign. You can go to ffrf.org/out and make your own digital billboard. This happens to be our honorary president, Steven Pinker, who's the professor from Harvard, whose most recent book is Enlightenment Now, about how the non-believers and humanists have changed the world, and we owe it all to the Enlightenment. And we also, if we have audio...
He did an ad for us.
He did do a TV ad for us. We're trying to make inroads in the United States on the constant religion that we're deluged with. So we're airing this on TV as well as digital. And we're
I hope the sound works.
See if it works.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. They have joined me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.
So is there a way to turn this up? We have one other ad that I'd like you to hear. Do you know? Could you hear that?
Yeah.
But can we turn it up a little bit more? So,
Is there a volume on?
No,
Okay.
that's it? Okay.
it already thinks
Well,
it's,
I'll,
it's on,
yeah,
but there's probably an
hold the microphone next to it.
But just everybody stay quiet. A moment of silence.
So,
AM. Try it, I'm trying to turn it up.
Oh, that's all
so
right.
then
It'll
go to
work.
the next one.
It's already at max.
We
Yeah, it's a
We
mess.
ran that ad because an earlier ad that we had recorded has been greatly censored. We've run into a great deal of censorship in the United States. And this is a commercial that was recorded for us by the son of President Ronald Reagan, Ron Reagan, who is, as he says in this ad, an unabashed atheist, not afraid of burning in hell. And it seems to be that that line, tweaking a belief in hell, has been too much for the major networks. CBS, NBC, ABC, Discovery Science have refused the commercial. It has run on CNN, Comedy Central, and on MSNBC. I don't know if you know Rachel Maddow, but we've run it a lot on that. And so if you...
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
So that's just a little taste of what we've been doing, starting with just 2 people back in the 70s, a little tiny local group. And somebody earlier today said, build it and they will come. Well, that's what happened. People join our group because they like to see that we are not just talking. It's great to sit around and talk. It's great to brainstorm, but that we are actually doing things that make a difference in the real world. Our talk today is called It Pays to Complain. Every legal case that you file in the United States, it's called a complaint. We're complaining about some violation, some abuse, something that's unconstitutional. So in your country, whatever the laws are, or whatever your Charter of Rights is, find some way to complain, because there's a lot of people that wish you would, and they would join you in that complaint and that protest to try to correct the abuses of the past and to make this a better world.
And I just want to leave you with a hint or tips that there are 3 kinds of activism to always engage in, and the first is to never let a religious myth or lie, a big lie, go uncorrected. And in our country, the United States, that might be the big lie that we're a Christian nation or that we were founded on God. I can see that the British Humanists are encountering the same thing. It might be the big lie that you can't be a good person without believing in God, which is one of the biggest myths that we all fight. And if you can, one of the best ways to fight that myth is to come out of the closet, and I'm sure everybody in this room has done so, but it seems to me that humanists, atheists, agnostics are our best advertisement. You are the best advertisement for free thought and humanism. People need to know what you are and what you believe or don't believe in order to give credit to that thought. And when encountering governmental support for religion or discrimination against atheists, make a fuss.